Hello everyone. So I feel the need to make a tutorial for mask making in the face of this great change that we're all going through and during some kind of transition. And I want to expand on mindful sewing practice and active meditations and things that we can do in the face of fear and in the face of trauma. And so this video is dedicated to the intentions and the prayers that we put into any motion, that we sew into any stitch, that we put into any brush stroke, that we breathe, that we speak, that we move, that we step, that we twirl. It's for those people who believe that change is inevitable. It's for all of those who love the deer and the whales and the trees. It's for those who believe that we can co-create an abundant future of wellness and harmony together. It's for those who feel the need to love themselves deeper so that we may love each other deeper. And it's for those who notice the patterns of their dreams and use that to unlock access to their subconscious to heal the collective psyche. It's for anyone interested in that and anyone interested in strengthening their emotional intelligence and just doing some kind of activity that can usher that in and hold space for that kind of processing. And ultimately it's for regenerating a world of wellness for all of us. All right, so getting into the measuring and planning and marking stage for our mask. When we're thinking of who we're creating it for, whether it be ourselves or someone that we care about, even if they're strangers, these are not medical grade masks. I am going to make it with 3 layers. One of the layers being a pocket for a coffee filter. And so just as a kind of like a home remedy for anything you might be facing. And when thinking about the social isolation that we're all having to, that not everyone, but a lot of people are going through right now. I feel like it's an opportunity to face our emptiness, and in that emptiness and in that clarity, in that space, that's where new dreams come through for me, depending on where I'm at and what's needed at the moment. And they can be abstract, they can be just like messages from spirit or whatever you believe in, if anything. And yeah, I think that that's kind of something that I one of the things that is important to me in making this comes from regenerating meaning in our lives and taking action in ways that are meaningful to us. And so when when I think about in a lot of like customer service working environments, when people have to wear a mask, even before this whole thing, just like times when people couldn't really show their true, like what's going on inside of us because it's a policy or something. And so during this time, even people who are having to go out in public and stuff, I think that even that is a form of social distancing, because we know that we're facing our fears. And when we look into each other's eyes and we communicate in a really intuitive way, I think that there's a lot of ways we can still uplift each other and just be present for each other. And yeah, so as we get into creating these masks, I would encourage everyone to think about ushering in our deepest gifts and talents, that together we all have something to, I believe that we all have our dreams for a reason, and that when we really cultivate them and encourage each other in them, then that's what's needed. And so as we stitch those intentions and those prayers into these masks for regenerating a world of wellness that we want to live in, I think that's the energy I'm going to be putting into this. Okay. So starting out with a coffee filter, measuring that first. Just whatever your preference is or whatever you have access to. These are generic numberings that I found that were on the boxes. So number 4 is a little bigger. Number 2 is a little smaller. And just fold it down. Fold it down where your face, where the edge of your face is. And then we can just tape it or fold it or mark it, whatever you need to do. And this is going to create the dimension of the mask. So I'm going to use a tape measure. You don't need to use a tape measure. You can use a string or a piece of paper or a cord or anything that's not stretchy, something that you can just use to like mark a length and to make note of it. So I'm taking 2 measurements. One is across this way. If this were to lay flat, how long would it be? It's about 5 1/4. I'm going to make it 6 inches. Just to give it some room to nestle in there into the pocket. And then I'm going to measure around this way. That's 8 inches. I'll make it 9 inches with some room. So we have 9 inches by 8 inches. H is for height, L is for length. Just to make note of the orientation somehow. And I'm gonna need to cut a rectangle. All right. So as we get into creating these masks, I would encourage everyone to think about ushering in our deepest gifts and talents, that together we all have something to, I believe that we all have our dreams for a reason, and that when we really cultivate them and encourage each other in them, then that's what's needed. And so as we stitch those intentions and those prayers into these masks for regenerating a world of wellness that we want to live in, I think that's the energy I'm going to be putting into this. All right. So starting out with a coffee filter, measuring that first. Just whatever your preference is or whatever you have access to. These are generic numberings that I found that were on the boxes. So number 4 is a little bigger. Number 2 is a little smaller. And just fold it down. Fold it down where your face, where the edge of your face is. And then we can just tape it or fold it or mark it, whatever you need to do. And this is going to create the dimension of the mask. So I'm going to use a tape measure. You don't need to use a tape measure. You can use a string or a piece of paper or a cord or anything that's not stretchy, something that you can just use to like mark a length and to make note of it. So I'm taking 2 measurements. One is across this way. If this were to lay flat, how long would it be? It's about 5 1/4. I'm I'm going to make it 6 inches. Just to give it some room to nestle in there into the pocket. And then I'm going to measure around this way. That's 8 inches. I'll make it 9 inches with some room. So we have 9 inches by 8 inches. H is for height, L is for length. Just to make note of the orientation somehow. And I'm gonna need to cut a rectangle. Alright, so what happened was I thought I was recording and I ran out of memory, so I'm going to walk you through the steps that I took. This is a button-up, traditional men's shirt, and that in itself is like a human construct, a human-made character in the collective narrative that we have right now. So when thinking about materials and how they were embodied in the life of this garment and how it may have been embodied and created, in what vein and what intentions were put into this to be created. Now this is a twill, and it's cotton, so it's a natural material, so it's breathable, and it's been washed. And I found this shirt at St. Vincent de Paul, and my intentions were to transform it. I actually bought maybe like 6 items that day that were all, it felt like they were all a part of this story that was coming together, and I have yet to transform it. And just with the textures and the feelings and the patterns and everything that was on the garments. So this can still be a part of the story, but for now I'm releasing the cuffs from it. And as I release the cuffs, I folded it in half so it was laying flat on the seam line, so that the seam line was on the edge and the fabric was flat. And actually I'm going to do it this way because the reason why I was drawn to this initially was because of the functionality, because I saw the pleats that go on the side of cuffs, and I saw how that could be the side of a mask. And if I cut both of the sides, both of the sleeves, then that gives me the body to wrap around this. That was what I envisioned. So I'm just going to put it how it was before I cut it. It was buttoned So this was the original placket. So this is pretty much how it was when I cut it. So I measured, right, this was my height and length. Height. This is the height because this is where it's going, this is where my nose and mouth would be. So I'm just as a visual, it needs to be at least 8 inches this way with room for seam allowance, and then at least 9 inches this way. Now that's in total, so when I end up putting them together, it needs to be around 9 inches. So finished. So there's some extra space on here that I can trim off, but essentially they would be stitched together. It doesn't even have to be in the center, but just stitched together so that the length is 9 inches in total, right? So once I release the sleeve from here, then I cut it right where the placket stitch was, so that the placket wouldn't really constrain anything. It's just totally able to open up. So when I opened it up, it was like this. And then I measured the height. This is the height, right? 8 inches. This is not quite 8 inches, because this is about 7 inches. Yeah, I cut this before I actually knew, so before I measured this, to be honest, but ideally it would be 8 inches, right? So I can just sew it back together, right sides together. Put a stitch line here, and then cut it. So, now you can use any kind of breathable natural material that's washed. Maybe pillowcases or sheets might be good because they're pretty tightly woven. I'm gonna have to stitch all of these back together and then trim it. So sometimes I feel like I get ahead of myself, but I think when instead of focusing on doing something like incorrectly, just allowing this process of creation to unfold. And going with the flow. I'm gonna go turn my iron on. So when we're sewing and when we're doing anything really, it's good to begin by grounding into our body. If you don't already practice this, it's a good way to start is to take a deep breath and feel that breath moving into every single part of your body, all the way down to your toes and all the way up your legs into your torso, up your neck, through your head, out your shoulders and your arms and your hands, and sending breath to every part of your body. Okay. I'm not going to worry about serging or finishing the edge of this seam because there's going to be other layers on here. Okay, so this is how it's going to be. And so let's remeasure the height let's do it at 9 inches. We're just like giving it a little bit of extra room for seam allowance, and actually I'm going to give it an extra inch for seam allowance and then an extra inch for the pocket. So let's do it at 10 inches. Okay, that's pretty much to this seam here. Huh. Cool, so now I want to, if I were to sew these right sides together, and I want them to be 9 inches in total. And I don't need to add extra seam allowance on the edges because the cuffs are already finished here. And then I fold that in half because it's doubled. Right, so this is where my mark is going to be. The center line, the mark of the center line. Okay, and I want to draw a line connecting these. I'm just drawing a line that's perpendicular to each seam line, and then after that I can see how they will kind of naturally connect into each other. You can see what I'm doing, but actually I don't know, it feels like it needs to come out here too. We'll see how that goes. That's the line, right? And then I add seam allowance to the line. I'm going to add a 1/2 inch seam allowance. To this very custom made tailored mask, deconstructed tailored mask, and then just mirroring it on top of this one. want them to be the same width. And then I can just sew these together. And that, well, I want to line up the edge that's already finished, and then just pinning every few inches just to see how it's going to line up. See how they're lining up. The right and the left sides of the face, right and the left sides of our brains. It's like, okay, let's sew it. So remember, we're breathing in our bravery to believe in something that's greater than ourselves. That's what we're breathing in. We're breathing in to the space that we're really connecting to our inner being. And we're breathing into this space between others, giving others the space and the chance to connect to their inner being as well, and having patience in that process. And with every breath, we can birth a new world. And what feels good is love, and honoring that feeling and cultivating that feeling in the landscapes of our minds and our beings. Today, I've been feeling really nourished by the feeling of this cascading waterfall. It's cascading down. I'm just really feeling that water, like pure, clean, clear water in the space between. What? Wait, I think I should I do it this way? No, I think the pleats should go. Should the pleats go on around my chin? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because this part is going to fold back. It's going to be like this. Okay. Cool. So now we're going to add the other layers. I'm thinking that the other layers only really need to ooh, I know. I'm going to mirror this. I'm going to use this to pattern the inner layers. So I'm just going to mark the fold line here. And now this can be my pattern. I'm going to give it a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to gently unfold it. And now this is my pattern for my internal layers. And I might as well use the shirt again. Perhaps. And I can just cut it when I cut it here. When I cut it out, I'll just cut out 2 layers of it. Two layers of the sleeve. I like this shape. Yeah, I'm really working on establishing relations with the materials that I'm working with and considering their beingness and their own essence that they carry. And I really love this color. I really love your color, dear shirt sleeve. I like what it left behind. I like the shape it left behind. Okay. So first we're going to stitch them. First, we're going to stitch this seam. And it looks like it's about a 1/2 inch seam on here where the filter was pressed. Now the question is, how will I attach this to here? Going to tack the bottom first, and then stretch this out to how it meets. Okay, nice. And now I attack it here with the pin. So then on either side it's tacked. And then this part is going to fold down like that. But first, I'm going to stitch this. I think I'm going to stitch this too. Wait. It's going to be a pocket. That means that it needs an opening. So the opening will be from here to here. So I notched it so I can see where I want the opening to be. And this is something that I want to put a seam finish on, so I think I'll use some binding. Have this binding here that I cut for a project I was working on. It's from a used sheet and it's pre-washed, so we're good. It's on the bias so that it can move around this curve. So I'm just stitching and back tacking from notch to notch. I'll give it about a little 1/4 inch so I can fold it under when I do the binding. See, I've stitched it on like here, and I'm going to fold it like once, and then fold this in towards it, and then fold it again. So I'm gonna just wrap the binding around the edge of the material so it doesn't fray. And first I'm going to take this end and fold it under here so that the binding itself is finished on the from notch to notch, and then I'm going to sew it I think I want to call this the turtle mask. That's the spirit of this mask that I think I will dedicate it to. I will dedicate them to. For so many reasons. Okay. I'm going to fold the seam line, so you know how each piece has a seam line here. I'm going to fold one seam allowance towards the left and one seam allowance towards the right to stagger the bulk. And as we stagger our bulk, our collections of bulk food, our collections of bulk beans, or bulk spices, or bulk bulk emotions, anything. So many things can come in bulk. Bulk air. Gotta love that bulk air. So actually, I'm first going to stitch down this layer because from here and all around to here. And I might do a double stitch too, since I didn't finish this edge actually, so I'm going to do a double stitch. Yeah, I just find this color to be so calming. Calming like the deep sea, like the journey of the turtle. Like some kinds of moss. Okay, so once we have that, now we can pin this in place just to line up our double layer. Right when I said double layer, I looked at the camera and it said 11:11. So, guess you know what that means. If you want to. If you want to believe. Okay, so I got that pinned on. Now I'm just going to stitch the bottom half of the oval. And I'll probably do a double stitch on this one too. See, now this little bubby can just fit in like this. Here, I'm just gonna sew it to make it easier. Okay, that's what it is. That's what we're doing now. We just gotta sew this part down. Oh yeah, I didn't do a double stitch. I'm gonna do a double stitch around the edge of here. Drew this shape up. Okay. Ran out of bobbin thread. So I'm gonna use this blue. This sky blue. Very light sky blue. Finish the top. Finishing the top edge. Alright, so as we wrap it up, you know, this was all just a kind of an improv on how to make do with the materials that we have, and simultaneously transform and hold space for love to come through. And so feel free to kind of make it up and have it be a sculptural thing. Yeah. We can embellish it further, and like you can add some decorative stuff if you want to. The last thing I will do is add some kind of string wrapping around here. So I'm gonna just make a binding for that, a trim with this white piece, and you can use a string, you can use whatever you want to. Something that's gonna hold. If it's a string, you could like tie a knot at the end of it and secure the knot. So if, depending on the size of the string. So this will wrap around my ears, and as it wraps around my ears, or whoever's ears it wraps around, may it open up the ability to really listen with our hearts, really listen with a sense of compassion and care, and just being there. We don't have to process other people's emotions for them, but I think what we can do is listen so that they can have verbal processing does wonders. And knowing that someone's just going to be there and for that is it can be very beautiful. And I feel grateful for any time people listen to me, or anytime I can listen to other people, I feel grateful. And if I don't feel grateful, I try to remind myself to be grateful. Because I feel like it's better to know the truth and to be able to process with the truth than it's just confusing to process with false surface things, you know? Okay, so here we have it, and I'm gonna pin I'm gonna cut this in half and pin where to put these portals to the divine hearing, the divine sounds of the frequencies. Okay. So first one, I'm going to pin up to the top of it. And actually, I'm going to stick it inside of this little tunnel at the end so that it can be tucked away. And actually, I'm just going to stitch that on there. And then I'll pin where the bottom edge wants to go. goes like here, right at the corner of the, oh great, and like here. With a 1/2 inch. Okay. Okay, maybe we put it through the buttonhole. That sounds fun. Yeah, okay. Okay. Here we go. Could tack down this little part right here, but that's what we've got. Turtle mask.